Look, thanks for taking the time out to speak to us today.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
It's a pretty crazy time. What are you up to these days at the moment during this whole isolating craziness?
Well, look, I feel like I'm fairly fortunate. I was filming something right up. I was filming something up until the Friday, and then on Monday the production got shut down, and so I got sent back to Western Australia.
Right.
And I thought, well, stuff was going to be weird, and I live in an apartment in the middle of the city, so I thought, well, I'm going to escape now while I can, and so I jumped in my car and I went to my parents' house. They have a property northeast of Perth, a sheep farm, and it's the fat home, so it's fairly big. So I escaped up here, and so I'm hiding out on a sheep farm in Gidgegannup in Western Australia.
Wow, I think that's probably the best place to be right now. It's like, talk about isolating.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty good. Like, there's a big paddock out the front that it's fairly flat, so I've been running around there every day, and there's a lot of space. And my brother is up here as well. He's got an immune deficiency disorder, and so he got up here very quickly with his young kids, and so the kids are up here, and I've literally been jumping on the it's a gator. It's like an ATV vehicle.
Yeah.
I've been throwing a fold-up desk in the back of that every day and a couple of chairs, and literally driving into the bush in the middle of nowhere and folding out my desk and working from literally the bush. So it's been it's good.
You're getting your creative juices going?
I think it's going well because there's no distractions really up here. I'm kind of getting a lot done. I keep getting like a bunch of proposals from different people asking me to, oh, do I want to use all my spare time to do this? And it's like, well, I don't really have any. So like, thankfully, I'm just in post and development at the moment. So my life work-wise hasn't really been affected that much, which has been great.
Well, that's pretty cool. Well, let's get down to why I'm able to talk to you. You've got 2 films under your belt. Talk about, a hell of a transition from one independent little film to basically a Hollywood kind of blockbuster in a matter of 2-3 years, this whole span.
Oh, dude, it was less than that. So
Right.
Hounds of Love premiered on the 2nd of September at Venice in 2016. And I was in Serbia on pre-production for Extinction by February 2017.
Was that initially the kind of the plan, or was it?
Hell no. No, that wasn't supposed to happen at all. It's just like one of the things that I tell other friends of mine who are just like going into making their first movie or whatever, is just go like, be prepared for success. Because like I kind of spent my whole life going, all I want to do is make a movie. All I want to do is make a movie. All I want to do is make a movie. And it seemed like an impossible go from the get-go. And then, then I finally got the opportunity to make one. And I didn't think for 1 second that, that maybe it would, play in Venice and be received as well as it was. So I didn't have a plan. And so like literally before Hounds of Love, even after I'd shot Hounds of Love, no one wanted to know me. No one cared who I was. No one was sending me scripts. No one would take my calls or return my emails or anything. But then literally after the movie premiered and we got some very generous reviews from the likes of, Hollywood Reporter and Variety and all of that, I woke up the day after the premiere, I had 97 missed calls on my phone. I don't even know how any of these people got my numbers or whatever. And it was just wild. I got shipped on a plane to Beverly Hills and getting wined and dined, and all of a sudden, I went from the guy who no one wanted to know to the guy who everyone wanted to know. And I just was riding a tidal wave that I didn't know how to control. And Extinction just sort of landed in my lap. And before I knew it, I was in pre-production for it.
That's insane. Now, is that experience in terms of, suddenly being wanted by, different producers and things like that and getting the attention all of a sudden, was that scary? Was that terrifying?
Yeah, terrifying. Because, like I'd never really had much success ever before. I was, a mediocre at best TV commercial director in Western Australia and made some music videos that I liked, but not a lot of people really saw them, and made a bunch of, averagely received short films. And so, you get riddled with imposter syndrome and thinking that it's a fluke. And did I really make this movie? Or did I just did the DP and the editor and the producer and the production designer, and the actors, did they all just kind of put it together? And did I just fluke this? So it's absolutely terrifying when you go from having no success to, having meetings with some of the biggest movie stars in the world and, Academy Award-winning producers and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, it's terrifying. It still is.
I can imagine also that what makes it more terrifying is how quickly it all happens. You don't I guess you didn't get time to just, you know, really settle in and then try to pitch some things to a studio. They're just kind of like, here we go. What do you think of this?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So, like I said, the movie premiered on the 2nd, and the third, I was just like, I was bombarded with, you know, calls from everywhere, and I ended up with an agent really quickly because I was lucky. A good friend of mine, a guy called Zach Hilditch, who I went to film school with, who made a couple of great films, you know, These Final Hours, and he's made 3 great films now, These Final Hours, 1922, and Rattlesnake more recently. And he did These Final Hours just a couple of years before I did Hounds of Love, and he had a lot of success with that. And so he got, you know, a big fancy agent, a big fancy manager, and he introduced me to his manager before I'd even filmed Hounds of Love. And I liked the guy and I jammed with the guy, and I guess we courted throughout the whole making of Hounds of Love. And then the minute that I got into Venice, he just said, look, you know, if you want me to look after you, I will. And he was my friend by then. So I just said yes. And thankfully he was able to steer me down the right direction and help me get a really good agent and help me manage the situation. But yeah, I booked a week because literally I finished the sound mix for Hounds of Love like 2 days before the premiere in Venice or something, because we got in an unfinished film. So I finished that, then went to Venice, and then I booked 10 days in London just to hang out with mates I hadn't seen in ages because it was cheap to get there from Italy. And all of a sudden that changed because I got an agent while I was in Italy, and I spent the whole 10 days in the UK just doing meeting after meeting after meeting, like with Ridley Scott's company and, you know, everyone. So it was it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and how did you settle on Extinction as the follow-up? Was that the one that attracted you the most? Was there a studio element to it that you liked, or?
No, I mean, look, it just, like I said, I loved the concept of Extinction, and it just landed in my lap, and everyone was saying it's a really good idea to get attached to something really quickly. Extinction was a great idea, and the producers and the team behind it were really great. So it just happened. It's essentially, I got attached to it, and before I even knew it, it happened. And, you know, I was sort of under the impression that, you know, you have to attach yourself to a whole bunch of stuff, and then you develop them for years and years and years, and 99% of them don't happen, you know, even at the Hollywood level. But I attached myself to this thing, and literally then it was in production. And like I said, it all happened so quickly. I didn't even, I pinched myself. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm in Serbia. I'm in pre-production for a $20 million movie. I haven't even come down from my last experience yet, or had a break, because I didn't get a break because, like I said, I worked on Extinction. I mean, I worked on Hounds of Love right up until a couple of days before it premiered. And then I didn't get a break after that. I went straight to London, then went straight from London to LA. And then this movie fell on my lap, and then it was up like 3 weeks later. And so it was wild. Yeah, it was insane.
I'm really interested in how, in the juxtaposition between small independent film here in Australia and a studio-run film in the US, and then filming around the world, obviously. But how did you find that transition? Was it difficult to try to get used to like a whole new system, or is it just a matter of just bigger?
Oh yeah, it's so different. Like, the best way I could describe it, like, you know, I'll just give myself a disclaimer. Everybody I worked with on that movie, I really love. From all of the studio executives that we dealt with, to all of the producers, to all the cast and crew, it was really good. But it's different, you know, when you're making a movie like a movie under $2 million, like Hounds of Love, which you wrote, and you're working with actors who are doing it because they just desperately want to do it, you know, not for the money or anything like that. It's really different. And, you know, there is no expectation. And we were making the film on, you know, on so little money that the movie was never expected to do well. So the buck stopped with me. I'm obviously very collaborative, and the producer, Melissa Kelly, was great and really understood what I wanted to do with the movie, and supported me in my vision. But then the minute you're making a studio movie, it's art meets commerce. And the best way that I've described it to friends of mine is making a studio movie is like making a 2-hour television commercial. You're surrounded by other people, even in Video Village while you're shooting. It's like, okay, cool, I got that. Do you think you should get one? Do you think you should get one? Hey, the shirt was, you know, like, it's just like doing a TV commercial. So it ultimately, you don't get to make your film. And so, yeah, it's a very different thing. I read an interview with Justin Cazelle, is an Australian director who always fascinates me. He's done great stuff, and I'm such an admirer of his work. And I haven't actually seen his movie Assassin's Creed, but I read an interview with him yesterday where he said that he has nothing but admiration for directors who go from the independent world into the blockbuster world and manage to keep their own voice. And I just thought that that was such a relevant quote, because I found that impossible.
Really? Do you think that's the general way it is, or do you think that was particularly your experience, or from what you've heard?
I don't know. I mean, I was learning as I went. Like the whole time I was struggling through massive imposter syndrome and just thinking like, oh, I'm going to get found out. I shouldn't be here. They've confused me with some other filmmaker or whatever. And so I didn't go in very confident. And so I didn't really put my foot down on very much. But I'm not that kind of person anyway. With Hounds of Love, I didn't have to, because I was working with, crew who I've known for, 10, 15 years in Perth. And so I didn't have to, put my foot down or be difficult, like it was very easy to be collaborative, but I didn't know a soul where I was working on Extinction, not one person. And I was working except for Emma Booth, who came in late because she played a small role, thank God. And I think that's a general thing. That's what happens in Hollywood, because, they have an agenda, and the agenda is to make money. And so, they've got all of these people, which is fine. They've got all of these different people assessing it the whole way who, understand audiences better than you, or they're very risk averse. So there was a lot of very bold things that I wanted to do with the movie that I just couldn't convince anybody that I was going to be able to do. So, I think that it's a pretty general experience.
Yeah. With Extinction, it had quite an interesting path to screens. I mean, it was lined up for cinema release by Universal, and then it got bought by Netflix for distribution. Were you involved at all in any of that? Was it a surprise to you?
Look, I'd heard whispers of it. It was interesting because I had a cut of the film that's very different to the film that was released.
Really?
That I really like, and really wanted to, get put out there. And Uni didn't like it. And that's fine. They had their own agenda. And I was under the I thought that maybe I'd get the opportunity to show my cut to any other potential buyers, and I never did. I read about Extinction going to Netflix in the trades. I didn't even know. Yeah.
Wow. Were you disappointed, or just still happy that it was getting?
No, I wasn't disappointed. I actually think it was the best thing for the movie, because I think that in a world of Marvel, I don't know how a movie like that is a low budget compared to the blockbusters that it would have been competing with, I don't know how it would have made any money in a theatrical. So I know that it did really, really well on Netflix, and so I think Netflix, they were great with how they promoted it. They did a great job. They were very supportive of me. They even let me go back in and change some stuff that I was really cool. Other cut. So Netflix were a great partner, and but I didn't I didn't know that it was going to go there until I read it.
Also, regarding how it was received, because you've gone through quite the spectrum with just 2 films. You went from a critically loved film to a film that got kind of mixed reviews. Now,
gosh, you can.
Yeah. do reviews and critical opinion and things like that, do they matter to you? Do they bother you? I'm really interested in how filmmakers receive this kind of stuff.
Well, it was interesting. Well, it's a really good question. So, I mean, with Hounds of Love, I remember for some strange reason being at the premiere and being completely at peace with whatever happened next, because the film was pretty close to exactly as I'd wanted to make. And so I thought, like, right, if this movie gets like 0 stars or 1 star and shit canned, like, well, maybe I'm not supposed to be a filmmaker, because I really like this and I've put so much sweat, blood and tears into this and made this movie exactly the way that I wanted to. And I made it from the point of view as an audience member. Like, I only want to work on stuff that I want to watch. And I feel that a lot of the horror/thriller movies that I try and seek out as an audience member, they're either not sophisticated enough, they're just a hook with shallow, vacuous characters and lots of gore and whatever, or they're, you know, there's the art house versions of them that are just too slow and don't have the thrills and spills. It didn't seem to be a lot in the middle, you know. Like I grew up loving movies like Silence of the Lambs, which are terrifying but have great characters and a clever story and a considered plot. And you know, the 90s was a really rich time for that. And as an audience member, I longed for that, and I just wasn't getting it. So I decided to make the kind of movie that I wanted to watch, and that was Hounds of Love. And so I was at, it was the kind of movie I wanted to watch, and I liked it. I could even watch it as an audience member once I'd finished it and liked it. And so I was at peace with however it was received. It was different with Extinction because, you know, the movie that went out to the world is not the movie that I intended to make, nor the movie that I have on my laptop. And so it's hard to read reviews that shit all over you when you're sitting there going, I know, I know, I know, right. You know, like, you know, and so that maybe it would hurt more if it had been exactly the way that I'd wanted it and people had ripped it apart. But it was a little crushing when a lot of what is being shit canned in the movie is stuff you actively tried to change, you know?
I think it's definitely something that a lot of people don't consider, or a lot of reviewers, even when I review films personally, it's easy to just say, well, the choices by the director are the following, and this is what I think of those choices. But in terms of a studio system film, there's so many people writing, you know, what they want on a list, and then the director has to just say yes or no to as much as he can, and then what comes out is something that's, like you're saying, a lot of the times the director's like, that's like half what I thought was going to be there, to be honest. And then we're like, well, Ben Young did this.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, and it's fine. And it's part of the process. And I'm not embarrassed by the film. There's a lot in it that I really like. And I'm really glad I did it. But as far as me saying, I never give it to someone and go, this is the kind of filmmaker that I am, you know, like I shot it to be put together very differently to how it ended up together.
Right.
And I still to this day, you know, maybe it's my ego or whatever, I still to this day prefer my version of the film and wish I'd had an opportunity to test that. And like I said, it was a good experience, and what a learning curve, you know, to go from making a $2 million movie to a $20 million movie under such different and difficult circumstances. So yeah, all in all, I'm at peace with the situation, and met a lot of great people and worked with a lot of great people. And so, yeah.
Well, that's great. I mean, yeah, exactly. Like you said, you've learned so much in such a quick amount of time that so many other filmmakers dream about doing. So that's pretty great.
Yeah.
Talking about Australian films and smaller productions, do you find that the Australian film industry, because that's always been a point of discussion, whether it needs more work in terms of funding sources, you know, genre films are quite lacking in terms of how much production goes on. What's your angle on the Australian film industry, and whether it's in dire straits?
I don't know. I mean, like, I always feel like it's been in dire straits, always. Yeah. It's always been like, you know, on the edge of collapse the whole time. I've been trying to make films anyway, at least that's what everyone has said. But as far as what we need, I don't know, you know. Occasionally we have a genre film which comes out and does really well. However, you know, generally speaking, the budgets that we have are small here. And so if we make a genre film, we're going to be competing with big budget genre films from all over the world with giant movie stars in them. So I don't see how, you know, Screen Australia or someone just saying, we're only going to make genre films now is really going to help the industry. It's from just, you know, and I could be wrong. This is just one dude's opinion after, you know, 3 vodkas on Friday night. But I feel like the Australian films that break out and do the best to put Australian filmmakers and the Australian film industry on the world stage are films that have a really strong voice, you know, whether they're a genre film or not. Like, you could argue that The Babadook is a genre film. I don't really feel like it is, but, you know, that film put Australia on the map for a while, you know, and more recently The Nightingale did as well. And I wouldn't call that a genre specific film. And, you know, Snowtown did, and Animal Kingdom did. And so I feel like what the movies that we make that seem to put the spotlight on the Australian film industry just from what I can see, are filmmakers that have a filmmaker behind them with a really strong voice and really clear vision. Because that's, to me, what gets muddied in Hollywood. You can scream as loud as you want, but there's 15 people around you screaming just as loud, and so your voice gets lost, in the echo of that. Whereas here, people seem to be more supportive of the filmmaker, and I think that is really what allows the most interesting stuff to get made. And I mean, if you look at the Best Picture nominations every year, the only studio movies that ever really get recognition are the ones by rock star directors who are going to get final cut and are going to be allowed to have their voice in there. Very rarely does a new filmmaker come in with a studio picture and get nominated for an Oscar. No, it's always your Nolans or your Spielbergs or your Soderberghs or, these people who are allowed to keep their voice when they've got a budget and a studio behind them. They're the ones who make the biggest and best Hollywood movies.
Yeah, right. I find that personally, I've always found that there's just a lack of film projects that come out of Australia. And because of that, it's also less chances to find those gems, like those films that you've talked about. I feel as though we just need to be taking more chances, and investing is a really hard thing. So your first film cost $2 million. How did you find the investing journey there? Was that really hard to get that funding? Because that's always talked about. One of the
it was really hard. I mean, I'm very lucky. I live in Western Australia, which is almost like there's a whole other. I don't even feel like as a West Australian filmmaker, I'm part of the Australian film industry in many ways. And Screen West are really great, and they have a wonderful initiative called West Coast Visions, where every year they give $750,000 to a new filmmaker to make a movie. Hounds of Love got that. Nice. Then Screen Australia came and topped us up and gave us enough to make it. These Final Hours got that. More recently, 1% got that. Below got that. Last Train to Frio got that. Wasted on the Young got that. And I'm sure I'm missing several. So apologies to those filmmakers. It's our Screen West is so supportive of new filmmakers. And I don't think I ever would have got Hounds Up if I was anywhere but Perth.
Yeah, right.
A lot of people didn't want to see that movie get made.
Because of the subject matter?
Yeah, and also because of me. I was an unproven filmmaker. I remember stepping onto set the first day and feeling like nobody liked the script or thought the movie was going to be any good.
Was that your own concerns, or did you feel as though that was legitimate?
The script got shit canned by so many people, really? Throughout the process of trying to get it up. I didn't believe any of them. I always thought it was good, but it was shit canned along the whole way, and no one ever really championed it other than the producer. And so I questioned it the whole time.
Wow, I guess it started proving people wrong when those reviews and festivals started getting it all, and so.
Yeah, but all those same people probably would have said it was shit if the reviewers said it was shit. It's really interesting how influenced people, even successful people, are by reviews.
Yeah, I mean it's a concern. It's also, I think, as a reviewer myself, I think it's a worry when you have people saying things like on both sides of the fence that say, well, I never listen to critics because blah, 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 blah. And then they'll say what they think about the film. And I'm like, but you're a critic now. Like, we're all critics. Like,
exactly.
Critics are just people like saying what they think about a movie. And like I always say, if I don't like a film and I give it, say, 1 star, I still want people to watch it because you might love it. Like, you might really love this film. I didn't, but you might.
I'm always surprised. Like, there's some stuff that everybody loves that I absolutely cannot stand or understand why anybody saw anything in it. And likewise, there's some movies that come out that everybody hates. And I'm like, that was brilliant. I cried in the last Star Wars movie. I loved it. I
really liked it too.
What, really? Did you like it?
I actually liked it. Yep. But
I loved it.
I like nearly all Star Wars films. Because I'm not a big, huge Star Wars geek. So in that sense, I'm not fussed with most of the creative choices. I kind of just take it for what it is. I'm like, it's fun, cool. And then backlash. It's wild. So,
I thought it was awesome. I just enjoyed it so much.
Yeah, me too. Well, speaking of like what you're enjoying, what are you watching at the moment? Are you watching anything particular, or like shows, or are
It's
you just
so
watching
embarrassing.
everything?
No, because I'm too busy and I get so tired at night that I just go to
Right.
sleep. But it's so embarrassing. But I'm 3 episodes into Game of Thrones. I
Okay.
just started
What
Game
do
of
you think?
Thrones.
What do you think of those 3 apps?
So far, I like it. It's kind of fun. It's easy to watch. It's bold, which is good. So I figured that, like, all right, well, yeah, I should use this isolation time to catch up on this.
Just to wrap up, do you have any upcoming projects you can talk about, or anything that you're excited about doing in the future?
Oh, I'm excited about lots. Yeah, I'm writing a script for someone at the moment, which is good. I'm really enjoying that. It's a Western, an Australian Western. So it's nice to be back in the world of Australia. I am finishing up post-production on a Netflix series called Clickbait, which was made by Matchbox, shot in Melbourne. And I really enjoyed that experience, and I'm enjoying post. And I'm developing a TV show with an author. I've got a movie in development with Craig Silvey, who wrote Jasper Jones, the novel and the screenplay, and we're developing something together. And I'm developing a whole bunch of my own specs. So yeah,
A lot going on. I love it.
Yeah, it's good. It's kind of too much. Can't keep up with everything.
Well, thanks so much, mate. I really appreciate your time, and you take care of yourself. Hopefully everything goes well for you.
No, thank you. You too. I appreciate you taking the time with me.